The holographic display bathed Queen Verana's face in cold blue light as she studied the tactical readouts. Earth hung suspended before her, a blue and green marble turning slowly in the projection field. Such a beautiful world, she thought, such an easy target. Primitive chemical rockets, her military advisor Kelron reported, his crystalline fingers dancing across the control interface. Fragmented political structures. No unified planetary defense grid. Their most advanced weapons are barely capable of reaching low orbit. Verana leaned back in her command throne, satisfaction warming her chest. 20 cycles of planning, and it had all led to this moment. The Kaldreth Empire would expand again, claiming a resource-rich world without firing a single shot. The humans would see her fleet, understand the futility of resistance, and surrender. It was almost too simple. Population estimate? She asked. 8 billion, Your Majesty. Diverse genetic stock. They'll make adequate laborers once properly conditioned. She nodded. The Kaldreth had perfected the art of peaceful conquest. Arrive with overwhelming force, accept immediate surrender, integrate the new subjects into the Empire with minimal disruption. 37 worlds had joined them this way. Earth would be the 38th. Initiate jump sequence, Verana commanded. Signal the fleet. We depart within the hour. The throne room emptied as officers rushed to their stations. Verana remained, watching Earth rotate in the projection. Something about this conquest felt different, though she couldn't identify why. Perhaps it was the planet's beauty, or the reports of humanity's curious nature. They created art, music, literature. They asked questions about the universe with an almost childlike wonder. They would learn their place soon enough. The jump through hyperspace took 3 standard days. Verana spent the time reviewing protocol and contingencies, though she expected none would be needed. When the fleet emerged above Earth's moon, 200 warships materialized in perfect formation, blotting out the stars. Scan for defensive installations, Verana ordered. Nothing significant, Your Majesty. Kelron reported, detecting some satellites, orbital stations, all civilian infrastructure. No weapons platforms, no shield generators. Perfect. Verana activated the broadcast system. Her image transmitted to every screen, every device, every communications network on the planet below. People of Earth, she began, her voice calm and measured. I am Queen Verana of the Kaldreth Empire. Your world has been selected for integration. Surrender now, and the transition will be peaceful. Resist, and your civilization will be reduced to ash. You have 1 standard hour to respond. She closed the channel and waited. Below, Earth continued its rotation, cities glittering like scattered diamonds in the darkness. Surely panic had erupted down there. Surely their leaders were scrambling, arguing, realizing the hopelessness of their situation. 42 minutes later, a response came. This is Grace Thompson, representing the United Earth Council. We've received your message, Queen Verana. We'd be happy to discuss the situation. Would you prefer to meet aboard your flagship? Or would you like to visit our orbital station? We have excellent coffee. Verana blinked. Coffee? She replayed the message, searching for signs of distress, fear, desperation. The human woman on the screen looked relaxed, almost amused. Her dark skin showed no signs of stress, perspiration. Her eyes held no panic. Is this a joke? Verana asked Kelron. I don't believe so, Your Majesty. Analysis suggests the human is entirely sincere. They see our fleet. They understand what we can do to them. Apparently, Your Majesty. Something cold touched Verana's spine. This wasn't right. This wasn't how primitives reacted to overwhelming force. They begged, or they postured, or they attacked in futile rage. They didn't offer coffee. Inform the human we will meet aboard our flagship in 2 hours, Verana said. And scan that orbital station again. Make certain it's not a weapon. Already scanning, Your Majesty. It's a research facility. Minimal power signature. No armaments detected. 2 hours later, Grace Thompson materialized in the flagship's transport bay, arriving via a matter beam of surprising sophistication. She wore simple clothing, carried no weapons, and smiled warmly as Kaldreth guards escorted her to the throne room. Your Majesty? Grace said, bowing slightly. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I appreciate your willingness to talk before taking action. Verana studied the human carefully, mid-40s by human standards, calm demeanor, intelligent eyes. Nothing about her suggested someone facing the conquest of her entire species. You seem remarkably composed, Verana said, for someone whose world is about to be conquered. Do I? Grace tilted her head. I suppose I'm just curious about the misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Well, yes. You've come here planning to invade Earth, which suggests you don't actually know very much about Earth. If you did, you wouldn't be here at all. Verana felt irritation flare. We know everything we need to know. Your technological level, your political fragmentation, your military capabilities. You cannot resist us. Oh, our military capabilities. Grace smiled. Yes, I imagine those look rather unimpressive from your perspective. Tell me, Queen Verana, when your scouts surveyed our world, did they happen to notice who we're friends with? Friends? Grace gestured to one of the guards. May I use your display system? I'd like to show Her Majesty something. Verana nodded curtly. The human approached the central holographic projector and activated a data chip she'd brought. The display of Earth vanished, replaced by a star map showing this sector of the galaxy. Here's Earth, Grace said, pointing to a blue marker. And here are our defensive partners. New markers appeared on the map. 1, 10, 50, 100. They spread across the display like a growing web, each one representing a star system, each one connected to Earth by glowing lines. Verana stood slowly, her blood turning cold. The Ashkari Collective, Grace said, highlighting a cluster of markers. Masters of gravitational manipulation, been working with us for 80 years. The Vorlen Unity, specialists in quantum disruption fields. The Tethrani Commonwealth, who you might know have the most advanced fleet in 3 sectors. More markers, more connections. The web grew until Earth sat at the center of an alliance spanning dozens of civilizations, many of which Verana recognized as far more advanced than the Kaldreth. This is impossible, Verana whispered. Our intelligence showed Earth was isolated, primitive, alone. Your intelligence showed you exactly what we wanted you to see, Grace said gently. Earth has been part of the galactic community for over 2 centuries, Queen Verana. We've just been very, very careful about who knows it. Why? The word came out as barely more than a breath. Grace deactivated the display and met Verana's eyes. 'Cause we needed to know who the dangerous species were. The ones who see a beautiful world and immediately think conquest. The ones who can't imagine cooperation, only domination. Species like yours. Alarms shrieked across the flagship's bridge. Kelron's voice cut through the chaos, tinged with panic. Verana had never heard from him before. Your Majesty! Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Dozens of ships emerging from jump. Hundreds. They're surrounding us. Verana's display reactivated automatically, showing tactical data. The Kaldreth fleet, 200 strong and arranged in proud formation, now sat in the center of a sphere of foreign warships. She recognized some of the designs from intelligence reports. Ashkari dreadnoughts, their hulls pulsing with barely contained gravitational force. Vorlen carriers, smaller but radiating the distinctive signature of quantum disruptors. Tethrani battlecruisers that made her own flagship look like a child's toy. Stand down your weapons, Grace said calmly. If you power up so much as a targeting scanner, 17 different species will reduce your fleet to constituent atoms before you complete the sequence. You planned this? Verana said, her voice hollow. All of it. Earth has been the galactic community's tripwire for 143 years, Grace explained. We're not the strongest military power. We're not the most advanced. But we're strategically positioned, we're diplomatically connected, and we're very good at appearing vulnerable. Any species aggressive enough to plan our invasion reveals itself as a threat to galactic peace. Verana sank back into her throne. How many what? How many species have you caught in this trap? Grace's expression softened with something that might have been pity. You're the 7th, Queen Verana. The others made the same assumptions you did. Saw our primitive rockets and fragmented governments and thought we'd be easy prey. They learned the same lesson you're learning now. What happened to them? That depends on what happened next. 3 chose to fight and were destroyed. 2 surrendered immediately and are now monitored protectorates, learning to coexist peacefully with their neighbors. 1 attempted to flee and was intercepted. Their empire collapsed within a decade. Grace paused. The choice is yours. Kelron appeared at Verana's side, his crystalline form trembling. Your Majesty, the fleet commanders request instructions. They're asking if we should attempt to break through the blockade. Verana looked at the tactical display. 200 Kaldreth ships. More than 800 allied vessels surrounding them, representing technological capabilities she could barely comprehend. Her forces wouldn't break through. They'd be annihilated in minutes, maybe seconds. How did we miss this? She asked Grace. How did our scouts not detect your alliances? Because your scouts asked the wrong questions, Grace replied. They scanned for weapons, defenses, military infrastructure. They never thought to scan for diplomatic infrastructure. They saw us trading with other species and assumed we were just commerce partners. They intercepted our communications but didn't recognize the code phrases we use for coordination. Your intelligence apparatus is built around finding military threats, Queen Verana. You never considered that the real threat might be political. Verana felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart, exactly. Her certainty, the absolute conviction that had driven her entire reign, the belief that the Kaldreth way was superior, that strength and force were the ultimate arbiters of power. What do you want from us? She asked quietly. Grace sat down in one of the chamber's guest chairs, somehow making the formal diplomatic gesture seem casual. Honestly, we want you to stop. Stop conquering. Stop subjugating. Those 37 worlds you've integrated, we want you to release them. Allow them to choose their own futures. We want your empire to transform from an expanding military force into a peaceful member of the galactic community. And if we refuse, then this fleet will escort you back to your home system and establish a permanent blockade. No ships in, no ships out. Your empire will be quarantined until it either collapses or undergoes the necessary cultural evolution. That process typically takes several generations and involves significant suffering for your people. That's a death sentence. That's a consequence, Grace corrected. We're not here to destroy you, Queen Verana. We're here to protect everyone else from you. What happens to the Kaldreth Empire from this point forward is entirely your choice. Verana looked at Kelron, her trusted advisor, her oldest friend, the one who had helped her plan this entire invasion. He stared at the tactical display with the expression of someone watching their entire worldview disintegrate. If we surrender, Verana said slowly, if we accept your terms, what then? Then representatives from the galactic community will work with your government to facilitate the transition. You'll release your conquered worlds gradually, with support structures in place to help them rebuild. Your military will be reduced to defensive capabilities only, and you'll be assigned mentors, species who've successfully made the transition from aggressive expansion to peaceful coexistence. It won't be easy, but it's survivable. More than that, it can lead to genuine prosperity. We'll be diminished, weak. Grace shook her head. You'll be different. The Ashkari used to be conquerors too, 2,000 years ago. So did the Tethrani. Now they're both economic and cultural powerhouses, respected throughout the galaxy. They didn't become weak when they stopped conquering. They became strong in ways they hadn't imagined possible. Verana wanted to argue, to find the flaw in this human's logic, to identify the trap within the trap. But she couldn't. The math was simple and brutal. Fight and die, flee and collapse, or surrender and transform. Your Majesty, Kelron said softly, the fleet commanders are awaiting orders. She took a long breath. In that moment, Verana thought about her reign, her legacy, the empire she'd built. She'd always believed she was making the Kaldreth stronger, more secure, more powerful. But standing in this chamber, surrounded by evidence of a galactic community she'd never known existed, she realized she'd been making them isolated, feared, and ultimately vulnerable. Signal all ships, Verana said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Stand down weapon systems, prepare for surrender protocols. Kelron's eyes widened. Your Majesty? Do it. Now. He hesitated, then bowed and moved to execute her orders. Grace Thompson watched quietly, her expression unreadable. I have one question, Verana said. Of course. Why Earth? Why make your world the bait in this trap? You could have chosen an uninhabited planet, built a fake civilization. Why risk your actual home? Grace smiled, and for the first time Verana saw something hard beneath the diplomat's calm exterior. Because we needed it to be real. We needed aggressive species to see an actual, thriving civilization and decide it was worth conquering. And because of our history. Your history? Humanity spent thousands of years conquering each other, Queen Verana. We know what it looks like from both sides. We nearly destroyed ourselves with our own aggression. When we finally made it to the stars and discovered we weren't alone, we had a choice. We could export our violent history to the galaxy, or we could learn from it. We chose to learn, and part of that learning meant using ourselves as the test case. The tripwire, the warning system for species who hadn't learned yet. She stood, smoothing her clothing. We put Earth on the galactic map not despite the risk, but because of it. Because we believe that if we can transform from a self-destructive species into a cornerstone of galactic peace, then anyone can. Including the Kaldreth. Around the flagship, Verana felt her fleet powering down. Weapon systems deactivating, shields lowering, the aggressive posture of an invasion force melting into the vulnerable stance of surrender. On the tactical display, the Allied fleet maintained position but didn't advance. They were waiting to see what the Kaldreth would do next. What happens now? Verana asked. Now we talk, Grace said. Really talk. About what the Kaldreth Empire wants, what it needs, what it fears, about how to transition from conquest to cooperation, about how to rebuild trust with your conquered worlds. It won't happen quickly, and it won't be painless, but it can happen. And if my people resist? If the other Kaldreth leaders refuse to accept this? Grace's expression turned somber. Then you'll have a civil conflict to resolve before you can move forward? The galactic community can't force your people to evolve, Queen Verana. We can only force you to stop harming others while you figure it out. Through the viewport, Verana could see Earth below, that beautiful blue and green world she'd come to conquer. It looked so peaceful from orbit, so serene. She wondered how many other species had stood where she stood now, looking down at humanity's home and realizing they'd fundamentally misunderstood what they were facing. We thought you were weak, she said quietly. We are weak, Grace replied. In a straight military confrontation against the Kaldreth, Earth would lose badly. That's why we never intended to fight you straight. We learned a long time ago that there are different kinds of strength, Queen Verana. Military power is one kind, but patience is another. Diplomacy is another. The willingness to make yourself vulnerable in service of a larger goal, that's another. Humanity's strength isn't our weapons. It's our understanding that we're stronger together than apart. Kelron returned, his crystalline form catching the light from Earth below. Your Majesty, the fleet has stood down. The Allied forces are requesting permission to send boarding parties to verify our weapon systems are fully deactivated. Grant it, Verana said. Then to Grace, what happens to me? That's up to your people, Grace said. Some surrendered leaders remain in power, helping guide the transition. Others are removed by their own populations. The galactic community doesn't dictate your internal politics. We only insist that whoever leads the Kaldreth from this point forward commits to peace. Verana nodded slowly. Her reign would end here, one way or another. Either she'd guide her people through this transformation and be remembered as the queen who saved the Kaldreth from destruction, or she'd be remembered as the queen who led them into the greatest defeat in their history. Perhaps both. I want to see it, she said suddenly. See what? Earth. Your world. If we're to learn from you, I should understand what I'm learning from. Grace considered this, then smiled. I think that can be arranged. The United Earth Council would probably welcome a formal state visit, though you'll be coming as a prisoner, not a conqueror. I understand. Over the next hours, the surrender formalized. Kaldreth ships were boarded, weapons systems locked down, command codes transferred to Allied control. Through it all, Verana watched Earth rotate below, that deceptively peaceful world that had just dismantled her empire without firing a shot. She thought about the 8 billion humans down there, going about their lives probably not even fully aware of what had just happened in orbit above them. They'd built something remarkable. Not through military might, but through patience and strategy, and the willingness to risk themselves for a larger purpose. The Kaldreth had thought themselves superior because they could conquer, but humanity had proven there was something more powerful than conquest: unity, trust. The patient work of building alliances across decades and centuries, creating a web of mutual support so strong that aggression became futile. "Your Majesty," Kelleran said, approaching quietly. "The crew is asking questions. They want to know what to tell their families." Verana turned to face her old friend. "Tell them the truth. Tell them we came to conquer a primitive world and discovered it was the heart of galactic civilization. Tell them we have a choice between destruction and transformation. Tell them I chose transformation, and I pray they'll support that choice." He nodded slowly. "They'll call you weak. The military councils, the territorial governors, they'll say you surrendered when we should have fought. Let them. I'd rather be called weak and keep my people alive than be called strong and watch them die for my pride." Grace Thompson remained aboard the flagship as the formal transfer of authority took place. She seemed content to wait, answering questions when asked, offering guidance when requested, but mostly just observing. Verana found herself oddly grateful for the human's presence. There was something steady about her, something that made this catastrophic defeat feel slightly less devastating. "How long did it take?" Verana asked during a quiet moment. "How long did what take?" "For Earth to change, to go from what you were to what you are now." Grace thought for a moment. "We're still changing, Queen Verana. Still learning. Still making mistakes. But if you mean how long before we stopped trying to conquer each other, before we unified enough to present a single face to the galaxy, that took about 200 years of hard work, 200 years of wars and treaties and failures and successes, 200 years of people choosing cooperation over conquest, even when conquest looked easier." 200 years, Verana repeated. "I won't live to see it." "No," Grace agreed. "But your children might. Your grandchildren certainly will. And they'll live in a galaxy where the Kaldreth are known not as conquerors, but as contributors. Where your culture and knowledge enrich the community instead of threatening it. That's worth fighting for, don't you think?" Verana looked out at the stars, at the massive fleet still surrounding her ships, at Earth below. She thought about legacy, about what it meant to leave something behind. She'd wanted to be remembered as the queen who expanded the empire, who brought glory to her people. Instead, she'd be remembered as the queen who surrendered. Maybe that was fine. Maybe surrender, when the alternative was annihilation, was its own kind of courage. "Yes," she said finally. "It's worth fighting for." On the screens around the throne room, data streamed in from across the fleet. Kaldreth ships reporting successful stand-down. Allied forces confirming weapon lockouts. Diplomatic channels opening with the governments of conquered worlds, preparing for liberation and reconstruction. The invasion had collapsed completely, transformed into something Verana never could have imagined when she gave the order to jump. Grace stood, preparing to depart. "I'll be in touch, Your Majesty. There's a lot of work ahead. But you made the right choice today. The hardest choice, but the right one. Will I see you again?" "Probably," Grace said with a slight smile. "I've been assigned as the primary liaison for Kaldreth integration, so we'll be working together for quite a while." After the human transported away, Verana sat alone in her throne room, surrounded by the quiet hum of a flagship in standby mode. Outside, Earth continued its patient rotation. Inside, an empire began the slow process of transforming itself. She'd come here to conquer a world. Instead, she'd discovered that the world had conquered her, not with weapons but with wisdom, not through force, but through the irresistible power of simply being better prepared, better connected, and better at understanding what true strength meant. The invasion was over. The real work was just beginning. and Queen Verana, once proud conqueror of 37 worlds, found herself strangely hopeful about what came next.